The Lost Colony of Roanoke, an American mystery. In the late summer of 1590, Governor John White returned to Roanoke Island expecting to find his colony thriving. Instead, he stepped ashore into an eerie silence. The wooden fort was empty and overgrown, cabins dismantled and deserted. On one palisade post, a single word was carved into the wood: Croatoan. That chilling message marked the beginning of history's most haunting mystery. Origins and ambitions for Elizabethan England, the New World brimmed with promise. Queen Elizabeth I, eager to challenge Spain's empire, granted Sir Walter Raleigh a charter to found a colony on the North American coast. Raleigh's scouts reported that Roanoke Island boasted fertile soil and friendly tribes. In 1584, men led by Philip Amadas and Arthur Barlow explored the Outer Banks and returned with glowing accounts. Even two Native Americans, Manteo and Wanchese, to help persuade the court. With the king's blessing, England prepared to plant its flag in the New World. In 1585, Sir Richard Grenville set sail with 600 men in 7 ships, intent on building a permanent foothold. The first Roanoke settlement, 1585 to 1586. The colonists arrived at Roanoke in June 1585. They quickly constructed a crude earthwork fort and cabins along its rim. But the moment they landed, misfortune struck. A hurricane wrecked one of their supply ships and ruined most of the provisions. By the time they'd scrambled ashore, the colony's chances were already fading. Grenville himself soon sailed back to England for reinforcements, leaving about 100 men behind under the command of Governor Ralph Lane. Lane's company tried to plant crops and fish, but the gentleman soldiers proved inexperienced at subsistence. They relied on food from nearby Algonquian tribes, but misunderstandings and mistrust soon brewed. In early 1586, Lane ordered a raid on a Croatoan village, killing their chief, Wingina, in a preemptive strike he believed necessary. This brutal act shattered any remaining peace. Dozens of tribes turned hostile. The colonists found themselves surrounded by enemies and starving. Then, in June 1586, the famous privateer Sir Francis Drake appeared with ships loaded with supplies. Drake was shocked by the colonists' plight. He offered to sail them home at once. Almost everyone eagerly boarded Drake's ships, escaping Roanoke. By July 1586, all but 15 men had abandoned the attempt. The island was left with only a tiny garrison to keep England's claim alive, and the rest of the colony was gone. The Lost Colony, 1587 to 1590. 2 years later, Raleigh tried again. In April 1587, he sent 117 people, families, tradesmen and soldiers under John White to found a true settlement. They intended to sail up the coast toward Chesapeake Bay, but en route the fleet's captain, Simon Fernandez, turned back and left them on Roanoke Island. White accepted this fate, and on July 22, 1587, his settlers went ashore on the old island. They rebuilt the fort and began planting corn. For a time it seemed the colony might finally take root. John White had tried to maintain an alliance with the friendly Croatoan Hatteras tribe. Manteo, now a lord among the Croatoan, served as a crucial intermediary. Still, tensions elsewhere remained high. In late July, a surprise attack killed one of the Englishmen, and in panic the colonists counterattacked a Croatoan village that had been friendly, a tragic mistake. The fragile trust between settler and native was badly damaged. Amid this turmoil came a single bright moment. On August 18, 1587, John White's daughter Eleanor gave birth to a daughter, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World. Her birth and christening were celebrated as a sign that the colony could succeed. But as summer waned, so did hope. Food supplies were low and winter was approaching. Governor White realized that without more supplies and settlers, the colony would surely fail. With a heavy heart, John White prepared to sail back to England for help. Before leaving, he and the others agreed on a secret code. If the colonists had to abandon the island under duress, they would carve a Maltese cross on a post. If they left voluntarily for a new location, they would carve its name. Then, in late August 1587, White departed with the ships, leaving behind about 115 souls, including his daughter, son-in-law, and granddaughter, to wait for his return. Little did he know that it would be 3 years before anyone would revisit Roanoke. In 1588, a huge new problem arose. Spain's armada threatened invasion of England. Queen Elizabeth ordered all ships for defense. Relief of Roanoke was postponed indefinitely. The story of the lost colony faded from view as England fought for survival. Finally, in August 1590, exactly 3 years after Virginia Dare's birth, John White was able to sail back to Roanoke. But the island held a grim sight. There was no smoke from chimneys, no chatter of families, no sign of life. The fort stood empty. In fact, every building and fence had been stripped down, as if the colonists had left in a hurry but taken care with the debris. White's heart must have trembled when he found the only message, Croatoan, carved on a palisade post, and the letters CRO on a nearby tree. There was no cross carved anywhere. According to the pact, this meant the colonists had moved of their own will to nearby Croatoan Hatteras Island. White set out immediately to follow that clue, but a sudden storm dashed the ship, forcing his crew to turn back. By the time he could have investigated, Roanoke's inhabitants were never found. White returned to England with an unsolved riddle. Theories of Roanoke's fate. Where did the lost colonists go? For 4 centuries, people have spun theories ranging from the scientific to the supernatural. One leading theory is assimilation into native society. Perhaps the colonists walked inland and sought refuge among the Croatoan or other Algonquian tribes. Oral traditions and early reports lend this idea weight. Years after Roanoke vanished, English settlers found tribes in the region who spoke broken English, carried bits of English clothing or tools, and had unusually light eyes. A map drawn in 1607 by a Jamestown settler even noted 4 Englishmen living with an Iroquoian tribe. In the 21st century, archaeology has given fresh clues. On Hatteras Island and along the Sound, digs led by Mark Horton and others have unearthed 16th century English artifacts, an inscribed slate, fragments of pottery, even a rapier hilt, mixed into native village remains. These finds suggest that some Roanoke survivors did live on with the Indians, keeping a few of their belongings, but gradually becoming part of the tribe. A much darker possibility is that the colonists simply succumbed to disaster. Their food stores were precarious from the start. Corn crops might have failed under a poor harvest, and New World diseases could have struck them like smallpox did the natives earlier. If sickness and hunger ravaged the community, the survivors may have fled south or inland for help, leaving the sick behind. The fact that no bodies were found could mean the dead were buried in the wilderness or swept away by time. Some writers have even speculated about cannibalism in desperation, as later happened at Jamestown, but there is no hard evidence of that. Nonetheless, a plague or famine is a grim but plausible explanation for why Roanoke emptied out without a battle or wreckage. Violence at the hands of others has also been suggested. A century ago, historian John Smith recorded a story from Chief Powhatan that he had ordered his warriors to kill the colonists so that a prophecy of his defeat would not come true. Powhatan showed Smith English items he claimed to have taken as trophies. This Powhatan massacre tale spread through England, but no archaeological trace has ever confirmed it. No bones, no burned huts, and modern scholars doubt it. What about the Spanish? In 1590, Spain and England were at war, and Florida's Spanish forts did occasionally attack foreign intruders. It is conceivable that Spanish forces might have slipped north to eliminate the English. But Spanish records and correspondence of the time make no mention of such a victory. In fact, Spanish search parties passed through looking for Roanoke, but reported finding no survivors. In short, hostile attack is possible but unproven. And then there are the supernatural or mythical explanations, the most colorful of all. Local legends quickly arose to fill the silence. Some Hatteras tribal lore speaks of an island spirit that could consume or hide those who disrespected nature. Folklore built around Virginia Dare transformed her into a ghostly white doe that would appear to lost travelers. Writers have jokingly noted that the word Croatoan turned up in the dreams of Edgar Allan Poe and on Amelia Earhart's last radio message, though those are mere coincidences. In the 1930s, a series of carved dare stones were discovered, supposedly left by Virginia's own mother, describing the colony's final fate. But the stones were later exposed as hoaxes, except maybe the very first one, which still puzzles some. None of the occult or miraculous tales are taken seriously by historians, but they show how deeply the Roanoke mystery has penetrated American legend. When all else fails, the unexplained romances with ghosts and curses, legacy and modern interpretations. Today, the Lost Colony of Roanoke is part of American myth as much as history. On Roanoke Island, Fort Raleigh National Historic Site preserves what remains of those early fortifications. Every summer, an outdoor theater production called The Lost Colony is performed in Manteo, using special effects and live action to retell the story. It has been an Outer Banks tradition since 1937. School children learn about Virginia Dare and the carved word Croatoan, and countless books, films and TV shows have reimagined the mystery in everything from documentaries to horror movies. Meanwhile, the scholarly search for answers quietly continues. In recent decades, archaeologists have taken their shovels and magnets back to the Outer Banks. Using ground-penetrating radar, remote sensing, and good old-fashioned excavation, teams have investigated native village sites both on Hatteras Island and inland in the Albemarle Sound region. Some finds are tantalizing. English pottery sherds, metal tools, musket balls, and other late 1500s artifacts showing up at sites once thought to be purely Algonquian. A key clue was discovered in a 1585 map by John White, which turned out to have an X marking a site about 50 miles inland, sometimes called Site X. Digs there have turned up border ware ceramics and brass fittings in a now ancient Indian settlement, as if a handful of Roanoke colonists had settled there among allies. There is even talk of doing DNA comparisons between modern Lumbee or Hatteras descendants and known lineages from England, though that's still in the future. Importantly, modern interpretations stress native perspectives. The Croatoan, Hatteras and Lumbee peoples have preserved oral traditions about English arrivals long before Jamestown. Some Lumbee family names, Dial, Oxendine, Copeland among others, trace back to colonial-era references suggesting mixed ancestry. Linguists note that certain Lumbee phrases echo Elizabethan-era Algonquian. While none of this proves the colonists survived as a people, it shows that the Lost Colony is woven into the history of the local tribes as much as into English colonial lore. Today, many historians emphasize that Roanoke should not be remembered only as Englishmen who vanished, but as an event in Native American history too, a moment when native and English worlds collided with fate. At its heart, the Roanoke story is a reminder of uncertainty. It is a tale without a tidy ending, a gap in our knowledge. Unlike Jamestown or Plymouth, Roanoke left no continuous community, no charter, no diaries detailing everyday life. Instead, all we have is a fragment, a name carved in wood, and the centuries of speculation that followed. The Lost Colony lives on in those questions. In the hush of the Outer Banks marshes, visitors still wonder, where did the colonists go? Each year, amateur sleuths dig in the sand, and historians revisit old clues, all chasing the answer. Perhaps in the end, the greatest legacy of Roanoke is this very mystery. It has become part of our folklore, a puzzle that invites each generation to imagine an ending. It teaches that history doesn't always give us neat resolutions. The people who vanished at Croatoan did not leave behind records to read their obituary. They left only a silent place and a single carved word. Maybe that's fitting. In that lonely silence, Croatoan echoes on the wind, daring us to guess its meaning. The lost colony has no final chapter, only an open question that has whispered through the centuries, beckoning us to keep searching and asking, what really happened on Roanoke Island?